Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to web application development, web development. This is our week 1 for the course. If you are accessing this video on YouTube, this is a course run on coolchat.com. So you can visit coolchat to see the course content and the other courses, the other weeks for the course as well. My name is Godwin Ashon, and I'm the one who will be instructing you for this course. Now, this is a web application development and not a web design. So the prerequisite is that you should have some knowledge about web design, since we are going to concentrate more about the programming aspect, not the interface aspect. So we will design the interface and add the programming as well, but our focus is more of the programming side. So if you have no idea about web design, please check out our web design course so that you can take that course first, or you can take it along with the web application development so that you can have the foundations for the interface design. Because this course will quickly talk about the web design, but our main focus is going to be web application aspects, especially the PHP and the database aspects of our web programming. So the course objective is that by the end of the course, you should be able to develop your skills in PHP programming. You should be able to create or develop web applications. If you want to contact me, then you can log into the coolchat.com. Once you log in and you're on this page, there will be a button that says that contact instructor. So if you click on this link, if you log in and you click on the chat with instructor, there will be a chat box where you can send me a message and I can also reply you. Okay, so welcome to week 1 of our programming, web application programming. So what are we going to study today? We will revise our CSS and HTML tags, which you should have known it in the web design, but this is a revision before the actual programming begins. So we'll talk about how to write a paragraph, how to insert an image, how to write a table, how to write a list, how to write a div. Then we'll talk about CSS attributes, how you can use style your page using the background, the width, the height, margin, padding, font size, font weight. Then we'll also talk about the display types, the display block and display inline. Then we'll talk about the div positions, relative, absolute, fixed, etc. Then we'll talk about classes and IDs. Then we'll briefly talk about JavaScript. So let's get started. So the application that we'll be using to develop our website and web application, the Notepad++. So first you need to install your Notepad++. You know, to write the code and do the practice along. Okay, so if you've taken our web design course already, some of these things should be familiar to you. Now, the basic web page or website has this basic HTML code. We have the HTML. Now, in web design, any tag you open, a tag is the one in which we have the element in between a less than and a greater than. So this is a tag. So any tag you open, you're supposed to close it. So we have the mother tab, and some tags have children inside them, and the children also have another children, and so on. So if you open a mother tab, you need to close it before you start to add the children between the mother tags. So the main mother tab of the web design is the HTML. So we open this HTML tag, then we close it over here. And this HTML tag has two children. So the main children is the head. So we have the head. So when you open the head, you need to close it. The head also have children. So when you open the head tag, you need to close it. Then the second child is the body. So the body tag, when you open it, you also need to close it. Okay. Now whatever you put between the body tags is what appears on the page. So anything you see on the page, everything is put in between this body. So those things you place in between the body is what is being displayed on the screen. Okay. Now the head also has children. So we'll talk about the importance or the usefulness of some of the children tags. So the body has the a meta tag. Then the meta tag have different names. The meta tag with a name description describes your website. So these two things are very important when it comes to search engine optimization. Now, if you go to google.com and you are searching for something on the internet, now what the results which Google fetch for you are content things people have written on their web page for the descriptions and the keywords. So the description, you write something brief about what your website is about. Basically, things that people will search on the internet is what you type here. So, for example, some people school website normally they write best schools in Ghana, best schools in Africa, or top 10 best schools in Europe, or top 10 best schools in Ghana, Accra. So, so the main thing is that things that you want people to associate with your website is what you put in the description and what the website is also about. Okay, so that if the people Google things which are similar to what you put in the description, Google will show your website as an option to get the information the person is looking for. Then we also have the keywords. So the keywords are the keywords that you associate with your website. For example, if it's an online shop, the keywords can be online shop. Then the country where maybe the online shop is for or is associated with. So the key things that you want people to associate your website with is what you write in the keywords. And the description and the keywords is what you use for search engine optimization, so that things that you think people might search on the Google is what you put in your description, and the keywords are just brief short words that will associate people with your website. And description is a description of your website. You can have a number of text for it. So these are things that people will be searching for them on the internet. So what you put here, Google will match it to your internet, sorry, for your website. So when somebody types in the search engine that is related to whatever you put between here, Google will show your website as an option to get the content from. Okay, so this meta name description, meta name keywords are used for search engine optimization. Now, their content is the values you want them to. Their content is what the content you want for them is what you put there. So for description, you write a description of your website. Things that you want to associate with your website, you write it here. The keywords and words that you want to associate with your website, you also write it there. Then the title. is the title, the text that appears on the top of the browser tab. For example, the title of this cool chat page for this this course is, the title is cool chat with the dash, then learn web programming for free. So this is the title for this website. So it means in this website, the title tag, they've written learn cool chat then dash learn web programming for free in between these title tags. Okay, so the title you want to show on the top tab of the browser is what you set over here. Then we also have the icon. So the icon for your website, the icon shows also at the top. So like here, you can see the cool chat logo over here. You can see the cool chat logo over here. So that is the icon. So here, in the images folder, if it means there is an image called icon.icon. Okay, so that's also it means that this page is the icon for it is that image, that far. Okay. Now in HTML you can also write code comment. So this is how you write comment. Less than, exclamation, then 2 dash. Then you write your comment, then the 2 dash, then greater than, then you end your comment. Okay. So we have 2 types of star. Star is how you groom your website. So some attributes you want your website to have, like background, color of the text, and the rest. You put them in the star. And there are 2 types of star. We have the external star or external CSS sheet. That one, you put the star in a different file and you put it in the folder somewhere. Then you indicate that file, and the star files are saved as .css. Okay, so example, if you have ref css/star.css, it means there is a folder called css, and in that folder there is a file called star.css where a number of attributes has been written over there to affect the website. Then we also have a star you put in the page itself. So you have the star you put in the page itself. Now the disadvantage of the star you put in the page itself is that for a star on the page itself, it means it's only for that page. So if you want to make a change, if you've done a star on 10 pages, all on the page itself, and you want to make a change that affects all the 10 pages, it means each of the page you need to come to over here and make the changes. But unlike the external star sheet where you have one file, when you make the change on that one file, it will affect all the other pages. So this one has advantage over this one. You can refer to this external star sheet on many pages, and when you make an update of only that one file, it will reflect on all the other pages which are reflecting it. Unlike this one that each of the page has it. So it means when you want to make a change, you have to go to the page itself and make the changes. Okay. Then later on, we'll also come to know about the inline star, where you can write a star on the particular tag itself. Okay. So this is the basic HTML code. So you can now in web design, we save our web pages as .html. Later on, when we start our PHP programming, then we can also save our web pages as .php. That one we need a server to run it. But if you are running on your computer a web page, you need to save it as .html. And in this course, we'll be using Notepad++ to be writing our code. So if you don't already have Notepad++, please go download Notepad++, or you can follow this link. you can visit this link. You can visit this link. So just copy this link into your browser, then you visit it, then you can install your Notepad++. But if you already have your Notepad++, you don't need to install it. So when you visit, this is the latest one. So you can click on the latest one. Then you click on download. So you click on this download. So on this download, you get an installable. So with the installable file, you just double click on the installable file, and you can do your okay. I have my Notepad++ on my machine already, so I don't need to install. But for you, now your download will start. So once your download is on the installable file, then the installation wizard will do it step by step until the installation is done. Okay, so now I'm the one that I have on my machine. If you only can search stop and you click on it. So I can open it here, Notepad. That's the Notepad++. So you open it. So after doing the installation, at the first time you are doing your installation, it will automatically open. But if you finish the second time you run, you can see and just click on it to open. Okay, so that is your Notepad++. So this is where you put your code here. So let's copy our skeleton page. So you can copy our skeleton page. Okay, and you paste it. And we paste it here. Okay, now like I told you, you need to save the file. For now, we haven't started PHP programming yet. So for the web pages you design, you need to save them .html. So to save the file, you use file, then save as. The first time you are saving the file, you click save as. But if you already save it already, and you are doing modification, then use a save. So save, you can press Ctrl S, but the first time you are saving, use Ctrl Alt then S or save as. So when you click here, then you go to where you want to save your file. So if I want to save it here in this folder, okay, if I want to save it now, the HTML files the extension is supposed to be .html. Now in a web page, the first home page is saved as index.html or index.php. So let's save our first destination as index.html. So like I told you, the extension is supposed to be .html for the web page that you use a browser to run. So we have index.html. Okay, so now once you save as index.html, you can see that the color has changed, indicating that it's an HTML file. Okay, so like I told you, the description, you put what the website is about. So I can write here, for example, web programming tutorial. Then keywords, I can things I want to associate with my lesson. I can say introduction to PHP, PHP programming, etc. So if somebody search for maybe web programming tutorials, now my site will also be suggested in the Google results that will be displayed. Now the result order depends on how often people visit your website. That's what we call traffic. So if more people visit your website, so and there are a couple of people with this same description or keywords, web programming tutorials, the ones that people visit the most will be ranked first. So in order of the rank. Okay. So most often, for example, if what your website is associated to a particular country, you can also add your country traits so that Google also, if the person is searching within your country, it will reduce the traffic, the order. It will filter the order so that you will be among the first ones because the person is searching in your country. So Google assumes that it's more of you searching for something within that locality. Okay, so that's what you type there. Then title, I can say that this is my first. So I can say my first web page. Okay. Now with the icons, this means a folder. So it means if you want to have the icon, you need to have a folder called images. Then in the images folder, you need to have a file called icon file. Okay. So in the same folder where you have your index.html, you need to have a folder called images. Then in that images folder, you have a file called icon.icon. Okay, I don't have that file, so I'm not going to do that. But you can also create this image later on. If you are using other images, you can put the images inside. So in the same folder where you have your project, you can create another folder you call images. Here you can be saving your images files there. So I can have my images here. So like if I have the icon image, I will just put it over here. Okay, but I don't have, so if I have it, I will just put in this folder. Okay. Now we have the external star. So the external star, that's where we write our CSS. So later on we will come to learn about our CSS. So that one too, it says that there is a file in the folder we call CSS. So you need to create a folder we call CSS. And you need to create a file, you can call it .css. So inside the main folder where you have your project, you can create a folder you call CSS. So in that folder, you put all your star sheet. Later on, we'll talk more about the star sheet. But those of you who have done web design course already, you know what it is. So you put all your star sheet files over here. Okay. So let's create a new file. Then we'll save it as a star.css. Then we'll put it in this folder. Okay. Now to create a new file, you either go to file, then new, or Control N. So each of them it works. So this file, this is the first time, so you have to press Control Alt S, or you use Save As. We are saving it in our CSS folder, and the file name is star.css. Okay. So in this file, you can type in your CSS code over here. If you want to use the external CSS, so this is the external CSS. Now, if you want to use inline CSS, CSS on the same page, you put your CSS code between this star tag. Okay. So now, if you run this page. It has nothing in the body, so nothing will show in the body, but it has a title, so you will see the title on the browser. So to run this, sometimes Notepad++ give you an option of a possible browsers to use. So if on your Notepad++ it gives a possible browser, then you run it from here. But if not, you need to go straight to your file, then you right click it. So when you right click it, there is an option open with, and because it's a web page, you can open with any browser that you have. But for debugging sake, we will be using Firefox more often. So you can install Firefox if you don't have a Firefox browser. But you can, for testing, you can use any of the browsers to test. Okay. So let's say if I'm opening with Firefox. So if I'm browsing this page, Firefox. Okay. So that's the page that is loaded. Now since I don't have anything in my body, nothing will show. Since I don't have anything in my body, nothing will show. But you can see the title as shown. So the title is showing. But because I don't have anything in my body, nothing will show. So let's go back to our code, our learning. So we'll learn some of the things and we'll put it on our web page. So it says that, like I've explained, the tag starts in the less than, then give the you write element name, then greater than. Then when you open a tag, you need to close it. So you close it with less than slash, then the name of the element. Okay, so we said the mother element is the HTML. So when you open the HTML tag, you close it. Then the HTML tag has two main children, the head. So when you open the head tag, you also close it. When you open the second tab, is the body, you also close it. Then the head also has a number of children. So when you open the children, we have the meta, which are two types. We have the meta with a name and description, the meta with the name keywords. And we also have the title as one of the child of the head. And then we also have the length, which also the links, we have the number of types. We have the link for short cat icon, and we have the link for a star sheet. Okay. Now we will be learning some of the basic elements or tags. So to write an header or a line or a big text on the title or heading, we use the H. So the H1 has the highest text, followed by H2, then followed by H3, followed by H4, followed by H5, followed by H6. So the higher it is, the lower the text size. Okay, so we can copy this so that you can see the heading, how it looks like. So anytime you are writing heading in your code, you can use either H1, H2, H3 or H4 based on the size that you want. Okay, so like I told you, the output of your browser, of your page is placed in the body. So in between the body, you put your tag for displaying on the screen. So the heading H1 has the biggest size, followed by H2, followed by H3, followed by H4, followed by H5, followed by H6. So you can save it. Now, since we've opened our page on the browser, when you make any change, you only simply refresh it. So you simply refresh it so you can see the updated page. So like you see, this is the H1, you can see the size. This is the H2, you can see H3, this is the size. H4, this is the size. H5, this is the size. H6, this is the size. So based on what you are doing and the size of the heading that you want, then you know either you use H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, or H6. Okay. So that is it for the heading. Now for a paragraph, we use the P tag. So we have less than P, greater than P. Then whenever you open the paragraph tag, you also have to close it. So in between the paragraph tag, you put in your text to display as a paragraph. So we can also copy this example. So this is the first paragraph, second paragraph, third paragraph, and so on. So whatever the text you want, you just write them over here. So you write the text over here. So we continue with our paragraph. So okay. So now, if you want to have a neat coding, you make sure that the children elements have a little space, separated a little bit from the parent element, so that you know which element is in which. So for example, you see that my body, the content, I've left a little space. We call it indent. So that one you can use the tab key. You can use a tab key to separate them. So this one too, we can have our body and our head also. We separate it a little bit from the HTML, which is the parent. Okay, so the children of the head too, we can leave one indent. So if you don't know what the tab key is, you Google and see the icon for the tab key and search for it on your keyboard. So you click on the tab key. So once you click, okay, then it leaves a space. So all the children will be separated a little bit from the parents. So you know which ones are the children, which ones are the parents. Okay. So now when I save and I run, this paragraph will also show. Okay. So if I run the page, okay, so this is the first paragraph, this is the second paragraph, this is the third paragraph. So if you want to write a paragraph, you just use a P element. So the less than P, greater than, then you put the content of your paragraph here. Then you close the P element. So you have less than, then slash, then P, then greater than, then you close it. Okay. So based on how many paragraphs you want to write and how many P tags you have. Okay, so we continue. Now, if you want a line, an underline, you use the HR tag. For the HR tag, you close it. So it's just HR and that's it. So it will remove a line beneath your content. So if I have something like this and I put it here, it will have a line. If I run, it will have a line beneath. Okay, so like you see, so that's a line, so that's the underline. So if you want to have a line in your page, you use the HR tag. So the HR tag is for underlining. Okay. Now if you want to write a link on your page, you use the A element. So the A element is for a link. So you use the less than, then A, then greater than. So here in the A tag, we have the ref. The ref indicates the link to direct the page to when somebody clicks on that link. So for example, in this one we have A, then ref. We leave a little space, write ref. Then here between the quotation for the ref, we write the link that when it's being clicked, it should take the person to. Okay, so between the ref equal to, then in the double quotation, we will indicate where the person it should direct the person to. That's a website. The link it should direct the person to will come over here. Now the text to display before the person clicks on it, you put it between the A tag. Okay. Now since we put the A in the P, then you also close the P. Okay. So this one, if you have it and somebody clicks on it, it will take the person to this website. Now, if you want the person to remain on your website and goes to the link you provide, then you also use this attribute called target. So in the target, you indicate it to be underscore blank. So this one will make it that when the person clicks on the link, it will still remain on your website, but you open a new tab for that new page. Okay, so let's copy this one, or we can copy the two onto our page, then we save and refresh, then we'll run our page. So if I paste it here, okay, now bear in mind the quotation on the website is different from the one you have in your computer. So when you copy and paste, you need to change the quotation marks. Okay, so you need to change the quotation marks to match with the one that you have on your computer. Okay, so once you've done that, you just save and you refresh. Okay, so this website doesn't have the target link. So if I click on it, this page will no longer be there. It will go to the cool chat, the ref. In our ref, it said we should go to coolchat.com. So when I click, that's where it will take me to. Because it is not a target blank, now it will leave my page and goes to that page. But if it were to get blank, it will still remain on my page. But to open a new tab, to show on the place where you indicate the ref. Okay, so I go back, then I click on the one which has the new the tab blank. So this one has a target underscore blank. So this one, when I click on it, I will see my page will still be here, but a new tab will be open here. So it opens a new tab for that link in the new tab. While my main page. Okay. So if you are designing a website or a web application and you don't want the person to leave that page, but you want a new tab to be open for the new link you are given, then that one too you need to use a target attribute. So target is equal to then the bracket underscore blank. So that one will move to a different direction. Now remember, for a web page on the internet, you need to have the HTTP or HTTPS attribute. If you leave those two things, either HTTPS or HTTP, if you leave this part of your link and you just write maybe something.com, it will not see it as a website. It will see it as a file on your computer. So in that case, it will be looking for that file to open that file. But if the file is not found, you get an error. For example, if I take off this HTTP and I save it and I only have coolchat.com, it will be looking for a file called coolchat.com on my web folder. But I don't have any file called coolchat.com. So it will tell me that it's not found. File not found. Okay, so if you are directing to a web page on the internet, always remember to use it to add the HTTP or HTTPS. Okay, now if it's the same file on the computer, let's say for example we have another file we call contact.html. So if I have another web page, I call it contact.html. Okay, so if I have another page over here, now that one is maybe contact us. Maybe you have contact us. Okay, so maybe another page where you write maybe your contact information, emails. So you write your emails. So maybe email, okay, then maybe phone, then etc. Then you finish your P. Okay. Now maybe in the page where you want maybe the person to go to that page on the same folder where this page is, then you just write maybe contact.html. So this one, it will be looking for it on your folder, the same folder where we have this web page. So since it is there, it will be found. Okay. So you have contact.html. So this means that you see that one doesn't have HTTP or HTTPS. So it means that on our folder where we have this index.html file, there is another file called contact.html. So when it's being clicked, it will lead to that page. Okay. So if I refresh this and I click on contact us, then you can see that it opens that page. Okay. Now that one too, if I want it to be blank, then I can also use a target blank. So I can also use a target blank on it. So when it's being clicked, it opens in a new tab. Okay. So if I refresh and I click here, because I use a blank, you see that it opens in a new tab. I still have this one over here. So we continue. So like I've explained it. Okay. Now we also have a list. Now to list an item, we use a li. So we use a ul tag which has the children. Each of the lists have the element li. So you have the li, then you write what should be in the list. So for example, if we copy this, it says state of matter, and we copy this. So your URL is your this one is unordered list. That one there is not doesn't have numbers. Okay, ordered list is OL. So that one you have the OL to start with numbers. Our unordered list doesn't have numbers. It's just a bullet point. So if I copy this, so the list, the items, you put them in the li, in the list tag. So if I copy this and I put it here and I save and I refresh my page. Okay, so that's your list. So the list of items you have. So that's for the URL. So URL is on order list, so you have them. If you want to use the order list, it's just OL. So OL for order list, UL for unordered list. Now in the order list, you can also have a sub, a list in the list. So that one too, in between the list, you can open a new list. Then you can also write a new list there. Okay. So this is also an example we can also try as well. Okay. Okay, so if you refresh, okay, so as you can see, this is a sub. So this is a list, and there's another list inside it. Okay, so a list in the list. So you can have a list in another list. So in that list, before you close it, you can put the new list inside in that order. So if there is another list, there's another list here too, you can put, before you close this list here, you can put another list inside it. So based on what you want to achieve. Okay, now you have image. So how to insert an image? So to insert an image, we use the img tag. So we use the img tag, then the src is a short form of source. You indicate where the image can be found. So if the image is in the folder, like I told you that we'll be putting our images files in the images folder. So if the image file is in the images folder, we put it here. If it's direct the same place as a page, it's just the name of the image. But if it's in the folder, you specify the folder, then slash, then the name of the file. Then you also write the width of your image. So you have width is equal to. Now if you don't specify the width, it's going to take the width of the image. So if the image has maybe 1,000 pixels, it's going to take that the entire space. So if it's better you specify a particular width based on the size you want for your image. Okay, so look for an image on your computer and save it. Copy and paste it in your images folder. Then we are going to use that image and display it on our page. Okay, so I'll also look for an image. I'll put it on my on the images folder. Then I can refer it. So you too should look for an image and put it in the images folder, so you can also refer it in your page. So I believe you've placed an image in the images folder. Now this is my image. So the name of the image is Godwin. Now every image has a property extension. So it can be .jpg, .png, .jpeg, or .gif. Okay, so if you don't know the property of your image, you can right click on the image, then you click on property. So in the properties, it will give you the extension. This one is .jpg. The type of file is .jpg. So in your name of the file is going to be the name here, then the extension, which is a .jpg. Okay, so in our image directory here, we have our images, then the name of your image file here, then the dot. Then when you check the property, the extension, you put it over here. So in my example is godwin.jpg. So if I copy this file into my page, I have to edit the image file to the image I have on my machine. So here I can have okay, so like I explained to you, the quotation on the page is different from what is on your computer, so you make sure you change the double quotations. Okay, so now I will change it to the image I have in the images folder. So my image is Godwin dot, so I will have Godwin.jpg, then I save it. Okay, so now if I refresh my page, I should see that image display on the page. Okay, so that's the image display on the page. So you too, I believe you've been able to display your image on your page. So to display an image, the tag is img. Then you have to indicate the source where the image can be found. So src is equal to, then in the double quotation you indicate the path where the image can be found. The image is in the images folder, the images slash, then the name of the image. So the name of the image is comprised of the actual name of the image file, then its property, so the extension. So if you check the property of your image and it is png, so it's going to be the name of your image.png. If you check the property of your image and it is jpg, so then here it will be the name of your image.jpg. If you check the property and it is jpeg, then it will be the name of your image.jpeg. Now if it is gif, then it's going to be the name of your image.gif. F. Okay, then this is the width of your image. So if you want to increase the width a little bit, you just change the value just to play with it. So you can just change the value and you refresh your page. So you refresh your page, you can see that my image has increased. Okay, so based on the size of your image. Now remember, if you don't have this width here, it will take the actual image size. So it will take more space on your this. That's why we give width to images. Okay, so this is the actual width of the image. So that's about some images which has a bigger width. It may take the entire space. So that's why you need to give your image a width. Now, image can also be given an height, but because we don't want to distort our image, normally we don't specify the height. But if you want to just play with it, you can give this image a height of maybe 100. Then you can see how it will look. So let's say if I write 100 here for the height and I refresh. Okay, so you can see it has given it a height of 100. Now, in order, you can see that the image is distorted. So in order for us not to distort our image, we normally leave the height so that the browser will automatically calculate the height and choose the height it prefers. That will not make our image to be distorted. So that's why many often we don't specify the height of our image, unless in the critical situation where you want all the image to have the same dimension. Then that one you need to give them the width and then the height. But other than that, you give it only a width and you allow the browser to automatically calculate the height and display it. Okay, so we continue. Now, if an image is also from a web page, a link, then in the source you can specify the link over here. So here the cool chat logo is in this folder. So if you want to use an external link for your source of your image, then here it's going to be HTTP. Like I told you, external links are always supposed to be either HTTP or HTTPS or any of them. But if it's within your folder, then you don't need the HTTP or HTTPS. So if I copy this and I put it, normally logos are placed on top of the page. So that's what comes before any other content comes. So I can put my logo over here. Okay, so I can write it over here. Like I told you, change your double quotation to the one of your keyboard. So if you copy in the file, just change the double quotation. Now I save, then I run. Okay, so if I go up, you see that the cool chat logo is there. Okay, so that's how so the image source can be an image on the folder where the page is, or an image from an internet. So the image from the internet, you need to specify the link of where the image can be found. So here it's going to be HTTP or HTTPS. Okay. Now, if you want something like a bubble to describe what the image is, then that one we call it title. So you can have the image can have a title. So we can have maybe title is equal to, so let's say logo. So if the person puts the cursor on the image, it will write in the bubble at a logo. So if I refresh, now you don't if you've given it a title and you put your mouse there, you see the bubble comes logo. Okay, so that's it. So if you want a description or something, a small text to describe the listen, when the cursor hovers on the image, then you write title on it, so that when the cursor hovers on it, then the title or the text of the title you write there will show over there. Okay, so that is the title. So it also applies to the link. So links also have title. So if you want, let's say for example, title is equal to visit or go to contact page. Okay, now if the person clicks, he hovers on this text where the link is, it will also generate a bubble to describe briefly that the person should go. Okay, so you can see the bubble beneath it. Go to contact page. So both link and images have titles to describe what they are. So if you want to use a title attribute too, you can use it as well. Okay, so we continue. Now we have a div. So a div is normally a divider. So if you are developing a page and you want to divide it into different sections, then we use a div, div. We use that div tag to separate them. By default, a div takes the entire horizontal space. So if you use a div, it will cover from here up to here, and the height is based on the content of your div. So that's by default. It takes the entire space of the horizontal space. Okay, so that's a div. Now we also have the span attribute. So a text span denoted using the span tag. The span tag is normally used to start a particular text in a paragraph. So if you want to a particular text so that it will be unique from the other ones, then you can use the span tag. Okay, now this is the first inline star that I told you about. So on each of the elements, you can have a star for that particular element. We call it inline star. So to write an inline star in the tag of the element, you just write star equal to, then in the double quotation you write your star. Okay, now the star for giving the color to a text is called, the attribute is called color. So you write the color, then semicolon, then you give the name of the color. So when we put this in our code, this one will have a color of red because we've indicated that our color is supposed to be red. Okay, now in this style it says font weight bold. So the font weight describes the thickness of your font. So if you give it bold, it will make it more black or thicker than any other text. So if we copy this, and we paste it here, okay, so like I told you, change the double quotation to okay. So now when we refresh, then you can see it's being talked about. Okay, so now you can see that this front weight is thicker than the other one. Okay, let's see. So here it's supposed to be color. So it's supposed to COLOR. So you have it here. Okay, so now you can see that the color for all the paragraph, because we use a span to start that particular text, you can see that the color is red. Okay, then here because we use the font weight attribute, it makes it thicker than the other one. So this is just a demonstration that the span is for styling a particular text in the sentence or something, so that it will not affect all the other text. Okay, so we use a color attribute to give the text color, and we use a font weight attribute with the bold to make it more thicker than the other one. Okay, so illustration of the above elements, we've already done them. So we've already installed our Node++. We've already created, seen how you can create a new file on the Notepad++. We've seen how you can save the file. For the first time, it's Ctrl-Alt-S or save as. But if you've made a change and you want to save, Ctrl-S will save, or just click on save. Okay. So now if your browser recognizes on the notepad, if you click on run and it recognizes your browser, you can run it from here. But if not, you go to the index.html file or your HTML file, then you can run open with a browser. So you just click on open with a browser. So all the examples we did is what is over here. So these ones we've already done them already. Okay. Now we are on styling element. So styling elements, we've seen how we can style the inline element, a particular element, using the inline option. So here now we are going to style it using the one on the page. Now to style an element, either in your external sheet, external file, or in the page itself, you have to indicate the element over here. Then you open the curly bracket. Okay. Then in the curly bracket, you specify the attribute name. So like in the previous example, to give a text to a color, a color to a text, we use a color attribute. Then you write a semicolon. So the attribute name will be color. You write a semicolon and you give the attribute a value. So you give the attribute a value. Now if you are writing multiple attributes, you need to separate each of the attributes from each other using the semicolon. So this semicolon indicates that you finish with this attribute. So if you write another attribute, it is on its own in that order. Okay, so that's the explanation. So now if you want to give our text or our text color of red, our text, if you want it to have a color of red, then we go to our this one. If you want to use the inline one, then we can just type here. So this is paragraph. We say we want to make all our text of all our paragraph to have a color of red. So the element's name is what? What element tag? What is the element tag for the paragraph? Is P. So we write P, and it says write a curly bracket. So you open a curly bracket. Now for the color of a text, the attribute is color. So you write color. Then it says write a semicolon. Then it says specify the value of your color. You want the color to be red. So then you separate its other attribute from other with a semicolon. So write a semicolon. So we save, then we refresh our page. So when we refresh our page, all our text, our paragraph, all our P elements, all places which has a P tag, will have a color of red. Okay. Okay. So this is a paragraph. So you can see that it is having a color of red. This is also a paragraph, so it's having a color of red. This is also a paragraph, so it's having a color of red. Okay, so all the paragraphs will have a color of red because we've styled it over here. But if you want to change the color just to play a bit, you can change it to maybe blue. Okay, then you just refresh it. So you see that all your paragraphs will have a color of blue. Okay, now the font size of a text, we use the attribute font size. So you can write font, then dash, then size. Then you can specify the size. You can use pixels, so you can write 12 pixels. So 12 pixels, then if you write 12 pixels, so all your P will have a size of 12 pixels. Okay, so you can see that it has become smaller because we say that all our P's should have a size of 12 pixels. Okay, so based on what you are doing how you want it to be. Now the attribute background is a background color is background. So if you want to give our body a background of red, then we can have the body as our element. Then the curly bracket. Now within the curly bracket, we put our attribute. So our attribute for the background is background. Then you specify the value, which is if you want to give the background color of red, then red. Now, in order to demo, you can put this one in the same page, but in order to demonstrate the external page example for you, we will write this attribute in our star, the external star.css file. So we will write the attribute for the background in this file instead of putting it in this place, because we refer to it as our external file. When we write the attributes and we save and we refresh our page, it will be updated. So now we want to give the element is body, so because we want to this attribute to affect the body, so the body element, then curly bracket, then the curly bracket you specify your attribute. So here our attribute is background. The background is for background color. Okay, now semicolon, column. Then you specify the value of your background color you want to have. So if you want to have green background, so this place will be green. Now when you finish an attribute and its value, you write a semicolon. You just end it with a semicolon so that you can add more attributes if you wish. Okay, now we can refresh our page. And you're supposed to see the background change to green. Okay, as you can see, our background is changed to green. Okay, now ideally, if you have a background color different from white, then you should also choose a color that will match with your background color. Okay, so you can also make maybe the paragraph or the color of your body. So to specify the color of each of the text of your body, then you can give the attributes in the body as a color. So each of the text in the body which has no star will have that color text. So let's say for example, text which has not been given any specific star for a color. Let's say you want to give it a white color. So the text will have a white color, so in the body. So when we save it, which has not been given any color attribute to have or color to be white. So here you can see that our H1, H2, H4, and the rest are white. Now this is still blue because we've already styled it in the P. We said that all P should have a blue color. That's why it is still blue. Okay. So now that's an illustration of both the external styling. So now we've styled our design using the external file. So for the external file, because you specify it over here, you style sheet ref is called css//. So because you specify this file to be external style, whatever style you write in that file, if you save it and you refresh your page, it's going to affect all the pages that has referred to it. Okay, so we continue. Okay, now we also have what we call class. So class is normally a name you assign to, instead of this time an attribute, you can give a name to a particular group of attributes, so that any element that refer to that attribute list by the name of the class will have those attributes. So like the way we write the star for element is similar to the way we write like the way we write the element is the same way we write the class. So with a class, it starts with a dot. So you have a dot, then you give the class a name. Okay, so you give the class a name. So once you've given that class a name, you can refer to that class in any element that you want to have those list of attributes. Okay, so this is an example. We have red paragraph. So that's the name of the class. So for a class, we have dot. So it starts with a dot, then the name of the class. The name of the class is red paragraph. Then it has a color of red. Then we have another class, yellow paragraph. It has a color of yellow. Then we also have another attribute, we call it bold, which is a class called bold. It has a font weight attribute to be bold. Okay, so now in order for an element to have those list of attributes in the class, you need to call that class on the element. And this is the way we call the class. In the element tag, you write class, then equal to. Then in the double quotation, you write the name of the class over here in the double quotation. So once you've written the name of the class over here, the attribute to have all the list of attributes you specify in that class. Okay, so an example, let's say we have a class called maybe red, which is for maybe color, that is for color attribute of red. And let's say we have dot yellow, which has a color attribute of yellow. And let's say we have a class called green, which has a color attribute of green. Okay, so now any of the attribute that we want to have that class attribute. Now, because our background is already green, so ideally it's not good for us to have a green text, because it will not see the difference, because it will blend with the background. So let's call our red and yellow in one of our P's. So for example, if I call this red attribute over here, so we have P class is equal to red. Okay, now if you have a class and you have a general attribute, the class will override the general attribute. So like you can see that we said our P element should have a blue color, but if we call this class red, which has a color of red on this P, it will override this blue attribute, because this is general for all P's. So once you specify a different class, it will override the previous one. So if we run this code, our contact SP paragraph will have a color of red, because it's being referred to as it's referring to our .red class, which has a color of red. Okay, so now when we refresh our page, okay, now because this one is a link, the link has already over. The link also has a color, so we are not seeing the effect of this class. So let's put it somewhere in the P that does not have a link. Okay. So by default, links are given the blue color. So unless you start the link, if the text you put between the link will still be blue. Okay. So now when we refresh, we see that we call that here. Okay. So now that class will have a red color. So before it was blue, because we say all P should have blue. Because we refer to that class, it will override the general attributes we give for our P's. So it will have the attributes of that class. Okay. Now let's call another one with in a different, let's say our H2, let's say we have a class of, we call the class yellow on it. So yellow. So here it means our H2 will have a color of yellow. So I am heading but size smaller than H1 will be color yellow. Will be in the color yellow. Okay. Okay, so as you can see, that one has a color of yellow. Okay, so that's what class is about. Now we can also style our element. So we can give our A, because it's in the green background, we can give our A to have a color of white. So our A, which is a blue color, will have a color of white. So now if we refresh, this A by default are blue, but if we written that attribute that our A should have a white color, then it will override the browser default color, then it will change it to white. Okay, so as you can see, our A's are in the white color. Okay, our A, which is the A link, they are in the white color. Okay, so we can continue. So that's an example of a class. So if you call the bold attribute, then the font weight is going to be bold because that's the attribute we're giving to it. Now we also have an ID. An ID is similar to a class, just that it is given a hashtag instead of a dot, but you have the name of our ID. So instead of a dot, it's a hashtag. So you have the hash and the name of the ID. Then when you are referring to it, you refer to it as ID is equal to, then you write the name of the ID. So just like we have class is equal to, then the name of the class, the ID too, we have ID is equal to, then the name of the ID. Now the difference between an ID and a class is that for a class, you can refer to several elements can have one class. But for an ID, if you are using a JavaScript, each of the IDs should be unique, so that if you write a code to affect a particular element with that ID, it will not be multiples. So if it is multiple, the code will not work in the JavaScript. Okay, but if you are using CSS, first CSS will not mind. But for JavaScript, each of the IDs should be unique. You cannot refer to one ID in the multiple elements in the JavaScript. So IDs are normally supposed to be unique, but for a class, you can refer to many elements to the same class. Now we've already seen the inline star, where we will just write star is equal to, then you specify your star attribute and its value over here in the elements. That we saw an example when we were looking at the span. So if you are styling, you are giving an inline attribute, just the element, then star is equal to, then you specify the attributes, then dot, then the value of the attribute, just like in the other attributes. Okay, so an example, if you have p is equal to star is equal to color red, then this paragraph will have a red color, so it will override the other attribute. So inline attribute has more power over attribute to be declared in the CSS, whether in the star or in the head or in the external. The inline attribute override all of them. Okay, so we have CSS attribute. So for a background, if you want to give a background color, the attribute is background, then you specify the value. Then the height of something, the attribute is height, then you specify the value of the height. If you want the font size, the attribute is font size, then you specify the value for the font size. If you want the thickness of the distance to be bold, then the attribute is font weight, then the value can be bold. Normal is just a normal, but if you want it to be thicker, it's going to be bold. Then display, you have the display block and the display inline. This will talk more in the subsequent slide. Then width, so to give the width to a particular element. Then text decoration. For the text decoration is how the text are being decorated. By default, A elements have a default attribute with text decoration. So if you don't want the A element to be decorated, Like you can see in this example that all our links are underlined. So by default, the text declaration is underlined. So if we want to remove our underline on the A, then we have to write an attribute. You can add another attribute for the text declaration on the A, but we give the value of none instead of underline. So when we give it a value of none, when we refresh, our A underline will be gone, because we said it shouldn't be underlined. So as you can see, it is gone. Okay. Now we also have another attribute we call hover. So hover attribute is, you specify it if the mouse is moved over an element. So if you want our length to be underlined when it is being moved over, then you can call the hover attribute. So this is how you write the hover. You write the element, then a column, then hover. Okay. So once you write it, then you put in the list of attributes. What should happen when the mouse goes over that element? So if you want our A to be underlined when the mouse goes over it, then here this time our text declaration is going to be underlined. Okay. So in this case, we have our text declaration to be underlined. You can see that the text has been underlined, because we said when the A's are hovered, they should be underlined. So that's also attributes that we're giving to it. Okay. Now list star, the list that we saw. If you have a list star of none, it will the bullets will disappear. So like the list examples that you are seeing, you can see that there are bullets. You can see that there are bullets on the list. So if we write on the UL that the list star should be none, then there will be no bullet on them. Okay, so let's apply this attribute. So let's say list star. Okay, so we apply this attribute on our list. So let's say star. So here, if you give the style of list star none. Okay, so here where we have the solid, liquid, and gas, our bullets will be gone because we said there shouldn't be any list star for it. Okay, so you can see that our bullet is gone for this one because we said we shouldn't have any list star. So if you are styling the URL, maybe you want to use it for a menu or something, then you can call the list star to style it to list star with attribute list star with each value none. Then the bullet will disappear from each of the airline. Okay. Then the margin and the padding. Now the margin, the difference between a margin and a padding is that the margin is concerning the boundary, the outside boundary of your element. Okay, so if I have this boundary over here for this table, now my margin is all the spaces outside this table. So here concern my top margin, here is my left margin, here is my right margin, and here is my bottom margin bottom. So you have margin bottom here. You specify when you give a margin bottom attribute, it specify how much space. If there's another element here, the space between this outside and the next element is the bottom lesson here. And here we have a margin left. So if you specify a value from here, if there is an element here, from here to that element, the margin. So here, if you give this one a margin left of maybe 20 pixels, then from here to the table, there will be a 20 pixels space before the table comes. Okay. Now you can declare margin for all the four boundaries at once. Here is top, here is right, here is bottom, here is left. So here it goes in clockwise direction, starting from the top. So you have the top value over here, then you leave a space, then you come to the left, the right space here is over here, then it comes with the bottom space over here. So the next is the bottom, okay, then the next one is the left. Okay, now if you specify a margin for you don't specify the top, right, bottom and left, and you give it just a one value, then it means all the boundaries will have that value around it. So like for example, if you have margin 10 pixels, it means the top will have 10 pixels margin, your right will have 10 pixel margin, your bottom will have 10 pixel margin, and your left will have 10 pixel margin. So based on what you want to achieve and what you need, right? Okay, so for example, and also difference between margin and padding. For padding is the inside. So if you padding something, it means that before an element, before each children element come inside, there should be a space between the mother and the child. So the space you specify will be that padding. Okay. So for example, to demonstrate this padding, let's say we have in another div, and the first div has a let's say right yellow color, and the second and div has a red color. Then we want to leave a space between the child, the mother and the child. Then we have to use a padding for that. So let's say we have div and the background star, the background, let's say is yellow. Okay. Now this div has a child inside it, which has a background of, let's say, red. Okay. Now, if we want to leave a space from this child and from its mother, then we need to give the mother a padding so that there will be inner space. So the padding is for inner space. So if you want to give an inner space of maybe 20, then you have to give it a padding of 20 pixels. Okay, so there will be a 20 pixel space before the child will be displayed. Okay, now if you have a div and you don't have anything inside, if you run, it will not come unless you give it a height of something. So if you give it a height, then the div will display. So for example, if I want to give this one a height of, let's say, 40 pixels, then even though there is nothing inside, that div will show. But if you don't have a height and you haven't written anything in the div will not show because it's going to be empty. Okay, so when you run this code, okay, so like that, before the child is displayed, there is a space from the parent, 10 pixels. So from a 20 pixels, from here to here, it has a padding of 20 pixels. So 20 pixels here, 20 pixels here, 20 pixels here. Now the padding also works because you've given it one value, 20 pixels. So each of the boundary, both this here is called top padding, padding top. So padding top, and here we have padding right, and here we have padding bottom, and here we have padding left. Okay, so it's the same way we give the margin. Here is top in the clockwise direction. So if you are writing for all the four at once, then you start from here, you specify its value, leave a space, followed by here, leave a space, followed by here, leave a space, followed by here. Okay, so let's assume that you want to have 20 here, then from here to here you want to have 40 here, and here you want to have 20 here, and here the same, but here and here 40. Then our padding star is going to be, we said the top 20 and the right we say 40 pixel, then bottom 20 pixel, then the left two we say 40 pixels. Okay, so now when we run our code, so this is for the top, this is for the right, This is for the bottom and this is for the left. We said it moves from the clockwise direction from the top. Okay, so now when you refresh, okay, you can see that this one, the right and our left are bigger than our top and our bottom because of the padding we give to it. So I believe you've seen the difference between the margin. So if we want to give a margin, the top, we want from here, from the space between this paragraph we have with this one, you want to have maybe 50 pixels space between it. Then we will give this div a margin top of maybe 50 pixels. So at the top there will be a space outside the bar border 50 pixels with each any other element around it in its neighbor. So here we can have margin top, let's say 50 pixels. Okay, so now when we save and we run, the margin from here to the top will have 50 pixels. Okay, so you can see that it's we are from here to here. So because we say margin top 50, the margin from the element to each neighboring element will be 50. So that's the difference between margin and padding. Padding is inside with each other chosen element. For padding, outside with any other neighboring element. Okay. So the neighboring element can also be the beginning of your page line. So from here to here too can be the beginning of those ones. Okay, so that is it. So we continue first slide. So the illustration is there, all the things we have done. So all these ones you've done that and I've explained to you. So that is it. So now we'll continue with our JavaScript. Okay, so now JavaScript. So it's also a code, a programming code we write in our in our page to perform a particular function. So we start with the attribute function, then we give the function a name. So you give a function a name. Now if the function will take in an input, you put the value of the input over here, the name of the input over here. Then you can, then from between the curly bracket, the function code comes inside. Okay, so if the function takes in an input, then the variable name will be here. And so to be function name, then variable name, then the function code comes here. Now you can call a function on different circumstances. So you can have onload, then you specify the function that will be executed. So for the onload is when the page load, then the function you call will be executed if the function the page loads. Then on click is when the element is clicked, the function that you will call will be executed. Okay, so let's take an example. We have this script. What this script does that there's a dialog box that writes a message. Welcome to Advanced Web Programming. So the function name is welcome message. So we have welcome a function welcome message, and our code is alert. So the alert in JavaScript brings about a dialog box. So whatever text you put between the double quotation of your curly brackets in the alert will be displayed in the dialog box. Okay, now here we are using the onload. So onload is when the page load, it will call this function which we specify here. So when it calls this function, the code will be right between the curly bracket to be executed. So it will execute alert in the bracket, welcome to Advanced Web Programming. So what the alert does, it brings a pop-up. So there will be a text in the pop-up saying welcome to Advanced Web Programming. So we can copy our script in our example page. You can see that it is in the head. So let's go and put it in our head of our page. So we can put it here. So we can have it here. Okay. So like I have told you, the quotation for the site varies with the computer, so you make sure you change the quotation. Okay, so now this is my script. So to write a JavaScript, you write script, then you end your script over here. Okay, then the function starts with the keyword function to indicate that you are going to write a function. A function should have a name, so you write the name. Now in the subsequent page, we'll see how you write names of function, names of variable. So, but what I will tell you is that in the function name or variable name, you don't leave a space between the words. So here you can see that welcome and message are together. You don't leave a space between them. Then you have your bracket. So in the bracket, if the function will take an argument to put it here. If there is no argument, it's going to be an empty bracket. Then the curly bracket, you write your code here. So in this code, we are just alerting to the user, welcome to advanced web programming. So we can call this on the onload. So onload is when our body loads, then we can call that function. So onload is equal to, then we can call our function name. Make sure it's the same name. So it has empty brackets. So here to write an empty bracket over there. So now when we run our page, when the page loads, it's going to bring a dialog saying welcome to advanced web programming. Okay, so you can see that's our alert. So welcome to advanced web programming. So you just click on it. Then there is it. So that's it. Now we want to apply this on write another function, and that when this image is clicked, it will say let's say for example my first image. There will be a dialog that will write my first image. So in that case, we can write another function image click. Maybe we give it a name image click. Okay. Now in this image click, what we will just output a dialog saying just a dialog that's saying my first image. Okay. So here we will call this function the onClick. We will use the onClick call. So here on the image, we'll just write onClick equal to, then call the name of the function. So where is our image? Our image is this one. So in our image tag, we have onClick. Okay, it's equal to, then we will write the name of our function. Okay. So anytime this element, our image will be clicked, the function we'll write here will be executed, which is a dialog that displays the text my first image. So if we refresh this one, okay, so this is for the download. Okay, now when we click on here, you see that my first image is being displayed. Okay, so that is a demonstration of our JavaScript. So we'll learn more about the JavaScript, but this is just an introduction of our JavaScript. Now we'll come to CSS layout. So here we'll talk about some layout CSS. We have static, we have relative, we have fixed, we have absolute, we have sticky. So we'll talk more about this kind of layout for the subsequent slides. So we are on the CSS layout, the position property. So when you are writing your web page, based on what you want to achieve, then you have a number of position attributes. So you set the position to either static, relative, fixed, absolute, or sticky. So you position these elements using the top, bottom, left, and right. Like I've already explained, we have the top over here, our right is over here, our bottom is here and our left is over here. Okay, so let's start with the static. So HTML elements are positioned static by default. So all the elements of HTML you see, they are static by default. Static position elements are not affected by the top, bottom, left, and right properties. An element with position static is not positioned in any special way. It is always positioned according to the normal flow of the page. So by default, all positions of elements are static. So that one, we don't position it to the top, to the bottom, to the left, to the right. So based on the page that we have, is so based on the content of the page is how they will be positioned. So this is an example. We can run it and see the output. Okay, so we create a new HTML. We can call it maybe test.html. Test.html. Okay, so we can paste our code here. Then we can run it. Okay, so let's run our test and see the output. Okay, so here our div has a static, which is positioned to be static, and has a border 3 pixels solid, and this is a color code. So in HTML, you can use a color code as well as the name of a color. So if you need a particular color code or a particular color, you can Google list of color code, then you can fetch the color code of that color and then use it. So in HTML, we can use a color code as well as a name of a color. So this attribute says that the border, which is the boundary, should be 3 pixels thick and it should be solid, and the color of the border is this color. Okay, now in the border too, we have dotted. So if the side is dotted, it will make the boundary dotted, but this one it says solid, so it will have a line around it which is 3 pixels thick, and the color is this color code. Okay, so now the class static, will call this class, so it is positioned by static. So like it said, by default HTML are static, so it's just like the way you position the normal content of an element. See, there's nothing so strange. This is similar to the same way we write our HTML. Start from here to the end. Okay, so there's nothing unique about it. This is just by default. All elements are positioned static. Okay, so now we continue with the other positions. So we are on the relative position. So an element with position relative to its normal position. So setting the top, right, bottom, and left properties of a relative position element will cause it to be adjusted away from its normal position. So if you set the top, the left, the bottom, and the right values, it will cause the position, the relative position element to adjust from its normal position. So here in this example, our class by name relative, it has a position to be relative. So we said at the left should be 30 pixels, and the top it should be 40 pixels, and it should have this border. So from the top and the left, there will be a little adjustment from its normal positions. So when we copy this, then we paste it in our test code and we refresh. Okay, so here it gives a specific pixels for the top. It says that this div which has this class, the top, from the top it should have 400 pixels. So 400 pixel top. So from each normal position, the normal positions should start from here. So from each normal position, it should have 400 pixels from the top. So from here to here will be 400 pixels before the div will be positioned. And it says that the left should be, I think, 30 pixels left. So from the left, it will be adjusted. So it will leave 30 space at the left before the div will be displayed over here. So that's for the relative. For the relative, it's been affected by the top, the left, the bottom, and the right. So the value you give to it, you leave that space and position it at that position. So it says position it 40 pixels at the top. So from the top at the time, from the space or from its normal position, there will be 400 pixels. They say top is 400 pixels, and they say left position it 30 pixels from the left. So from here to here, it will leave 30 pixels, then it will be positioned over here. Okay, so for the relative position, it's affect the top value and the left value and the bottom and the right values affect the div based on its normal position. Then we have the fixed position. An element with fixed position is positioned relative to the viewport, which means that it always stays in the same place, even if the page is scrolled. The top, right, bottom, and left properties are used to position the element. So the fix, it will be fixed on the page. So even if you are scrolling, the page will still remain there. So if there is a div that you want it to remain at a particular place on your page, then you should use the position fixed attribute. So the fixed attribute, it will always be there. So whether it's being scrolled, it will not be moving to the top or bottom. It will remain over there. So let's run this example. So here they say it is fixed. The position is fixed, and it starts from the top. From the top to the div is 0. So it means there is no space between the top and the div. And the left too is also 0. So it means from the left to the distance is 0. From the bottom is 0. From the right is also 0. Then it has a width of 300 pixels with a border of this, and the background color is this. Okay, so now we call that class, then we see how it is. So for fixed, it remains on the page, it doesn't move anywhere. Okay, so we can refresh our page. Okay, so you can see it's fixed over here. So because we said top is 0, the top will start at the top. Then left is also 0, bottom is 0, so it will also be the bottom will be at the 0. Then the right is 0. So, but because we give it a width, it will end at the 300 pixel here over here. If you haven't given it a width, it will come to the, because the left is also, the right is also 0, then it will be somewhere here. Okay, but because we give it a width of 300, it will remain over here. So even if there are a lot of content at this side will scroll, but this side will remain fixed unless you give it a property to scroll, to have a scroll if the content of inside is more. Other than that, it will still remain fixed over here. So that's a fix. It always remain fixed at the position where you give it. So if you want to debug, change some values here and see how it's going to be. So like I told you, we use the Mozilla for debugging. So to debug, you press on the F function key. So the Fn key and the 12 at the same time. So Fn then 12. So FN12, you see the debugging menu on your Mozilla Chrome, like you can see in your Mozilla browser. So here, if I want to check the CSS of this attribute, I have to click on this cursor icon. So if I click here and I put my cursor on that element, if I click on it, the style of that element will be here. So I can change it and I can see the of the change. So remember, any change you do here will not affect the change of your file. It's just for you to see how the effect is going to be like. So if you are satisfied with it, then you can go to your code and make a change. So let's say, for example, you want the top space should be from maybe 20 pixels away from the normal position. So if you want it to be somewhere here, from here to here to be 20 pixels, then our left, if we want the left to be 20 pixels from its normal position, then our left will be 20 pixels. So we can have our left to be, our left value should be 20 pixels. Okay, so as you can see that it has left a space at your left, 20 pixels. Now if you also want to leave a space at the top a little bit, then we can also have our top. Let's say you want to leave 50 pixels from the top, so 50 pixels. Okay, so you can see that it has left our 50 pixel top. Okay, now if we remove our width so that it covers the entire space, now because we said our right is 0, you can see that our distance. So if you want to give the right also a little space to be somewhere maybe 20, and you can also have our right to move 50 from its normal position. So we can have our right 50 over here. So 50 pixels. Okay, so you can see that from its normal position at the right, it has positioned it in 50 away from its right position, the normal right. So the bottom too, if you want a space to be at the bottom away from its normal, then the bottom too, we can give it a space of, let's say, bottom, if you want, let's say 50, then you can have the bottom value also 50. So in that case, there will be 50 pixels from the bottom, away from the bottom. Okay, so that's how we position this, and it is fixed. Fixed means that it doesn't move. Okay, so it will cover any other page that comes on its way. So like you see previously, when it was 0, it was even covering this text that you were not seeing it. Okay, so you use the top, the left, bottom, and the right to decide how you want your page, where the position of that div. Okay, so this div has a background color of this. Okay, so you are positioning it on the page relative to its normal position. So the normal position 0, top has a 0 star from here. So if you want a space away from the top, then you give it a top, then the space will top and the value of the space here. Now if you want it to move away from the right, then the space you want from the right, you give it here. If you want it to move away from the bottom, then the space you want, you give it here. If you want it away from the left, then the space you also give it here. So that is a relative. It's fixed on with the relative position fixed. It is fixed on the page, so it doesn't move anywhere. Okay, so when we are designing a dashboard, we can use a fixed position at the left hand side where our menus will be. So that one will always remain from, let's say, the top to the bottom. So that bar, there will be a bar for our menu from the top to the bottom, which is fixed. And the rest one, they can be movable. Okay, so that's a fixed position property. So we move on to the other property. Then the absolute property. Okay, so what does the absolute do? So an element with position absolute is position relative to the nearest position ancestor instead of position relative to the viewport like fixed. So for the fixed one, the positions are from here, 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 and here. Okay, so that's a viewport, the entire screen. But for the absolute, it's based on a div, the each parent div. Okay, so that you say the ancestor. So each parent div is similar to fixed, but just that one is based on each parent div. So if you have a div over here, and we have another div inside, which will be the absolute. So the position, the left, the top, and the right will be based on the position of the parent div. Okay, so if you want an absolute to take effect, it means your parent div must be relative. So you have to set your parent div to be relative. So before you can call your child element with the absolute attribute, so that it will be the top, the left, and the right position will be relative to the parent div. Okay, so let's take for example, we have this div which is relative, position relative, with this width and height and border. Okay, so now when we give an absolute div, so the position of our absolute will be relative to our parent if we put our absolute child in our relative one. So that position will be relative to our parent. Unlike the fixed, that it takes its position is based on the entire screen that's of your page. Let's copy this. Okay, then we run this. Okay, so we save and run. Okay, so now you see this one is a relative position, which is a parent. So our absolute div, which is our inner one, is relative to our this div. Unlike the fixed, that is relative to from here to here to here to there. For absolute, even though it is fixed, it is in relation to our to your parent div. Okay, so if I click on the cursor and I have it here, I see the attribute. Now it says that from the parent, the top position is 20 pixels. So if you check from here to here, it should be 20 pixels. That's for the top. It should be 20 pixels. And it says left is 0, so there is no space at the left of the parent. And it says okay, so that's only the top and left. Okay, so that's it. So it gives a top of this and the left of 0. And because this one has, it will end over here. If it doesn't have a width, it will take the entire width space. Okay, so now if we like, we can also change the value of our left so that you can see the effect. So let's say if the width and the left is also 20 pixels. Okay, so you can see that from the left side, from the parent div, it is 20 pixels. From the top side, it's also 20 pixels. So the difference between an absolute and a fixed is that for the fixed, the top, left, bottom, and right is relation to the viewport. So that one relative to the entire screen. But for an absolute, even though it is fixed, it is relative to the parent or ancestor div, and that ancestor div too, you need to give it a property of relative so that the absolute can take effect. If you don't give the relative, then you take the relative position of the mother or the descent. So like as you can see, when I remove the position relative of the parent, you saw that it moved to the other one because it will rather go to another relative position. So if you want a particular div to be absolute to its parent, the parent should also have a position attribute of relative. Then the absolute div based on the relation to its parent will take effect. So based on the position to each parent, you can give the left space, the top space, the right space, and the bottom space as well. Okay, so now we move on to our last section, sticky. So what is sticky? So an element with position sticky is positioned based on the user's scroll position. So here, remember, sticky is based on scrolling. So you scroll and you get to a particular position, then the div will be fixed at that position. Now, if you move below at top, then the sticky will not take effect. But if you get to a particular position, then the sticky will take an effect. Okay, so that's what it says. An element with position sticky is positioned based on the user's scroll position. A sticky element toggles between relative and fixed, depending on the scroll position. So if it hasn't reached the scroll position, it's going to be relative. But if it gets to that position, we can't fix, so it will remain there, over there. Okay. So in Internet Explorer or Edge 15, it was not this feature was not there, but I think the latest one it may have. Okay, so with the sticky also you need to specify the top or the right or bottom or left, at least one of them, for it to work. Okay, so now let's take an example. So we have a class called sticky. So position is position sticky, top is 0, padding is 50, background is this, border is this. Okay, so we will run this code. Okay, so we call this class. This is a class sticky at this point. So let's refresh. Okay, so now you can see that it is not stick. It has no stick. So here it's just a page over here. So now let's try to scroll and see what happens. You see, so now when it gets the scroll gets to that position, it stick at that position. Okay, now because we said top is 0, so from here to here, when it gets to that position, the top will be 0 because we said the top position to be 0. So like it says that for sticky, you need to at least one of the positions should be specified, whether top, whether left, whether right or bottom. You need to specify it. Okay, so for the sticky, when the scroll gets to its position, then it becomes fixed. So it doesn't move to any other place. It's fixed at that position. So you can see that the others will be scrolling, but that one remains there. Okay, so that's what the sticky does. So sticky, normally if you want the sticky, you want to have an important information on the stick on a particular day, you can make it sticky so that even if it scroll, it will always be there. It will always be there on the screen. It doesn't disappear, even though any other ones will be moving out of the screen. Okay, so that's what the sticky does. So if we want, let's say for example, the sticky to be positioned, maybe leave a space from the top, maybe 20 pixels, then you can modify here the value set. So you can give the positions for the left and the yes, and the position where the bar is supposed to be fixed. The position is supposed to be fixed. So here you can see that it has left a space over here. Okay, but if you want it to be straight, maybe at the top, then here the top can be 0. Okay. So like it says that the position sticky should have at least one of the position attributes. You should have at least a top or left or bottom or right. Okay. So if you make here, let's say left, maybe let's say okay, so we have a top. Okay, let's say we have right. Okay, so it seems like only the top position works, the other one doesn't work. Let's okay, so if you want the other positions to work, then it's not going to be 100%. But if it takes the entire lesson, then only the top works. Okay, so that is it for sticky. So it scrolls until when it gets to that position, anything above it, it will not scroll. But when it gets to that position, then it will start to be fixed. Then others can be scrolling below it. Okay, so that's an example for the sticky. So we continue with overlapping elements. So when elements are positioned, they can overlap other elements. So if you position an element, it can also overlap one element will be below another element. Okay, so in order to avoid that, then we use a Z index. So we call something Z index. So we use the Z index property specify the stack order of an element. So it shows this one should be above the other. So the higher the Z index, then the more the top, then that's the topmost element, followed by the next one. So this is an example where we have images banner. So in this example, our IMG has a Z index of -1. Now our image is is an absolute position. So with an absolute position, it means it will be at the top is going to be left is 0 and the top is going to be 0. So since it's an absolute position, then any other element that will come to that position where it is being placed is either the element will be over it or below it based on the Z index that you set. Okay, so in this example, we have the image is images.banner. So you can download this image or you can use it. You can download this image or you can use it in your code. So since if I don't want to download it, I'll use a URL of that image. So let's say for example, I run this. Okay. So in the banner, for the banner, I will use the link, the cool chat example link. So yeah, my image will be this URL. So the source of the image is going to be this link, and that you can use your own image. Okay, so now when you save, then you can refresh. Okay, so now you can see that our text is on top of our image. Why is it on top of our image? They overlap each other. But why is it on top? Because we're giving the image to have a Z index of -1. So if we increase the Z index of our image, then the text will be below it, so it will not be visible. So let's say, for example, if we give it a more Z index, you see that the text has gone below the image, so it's not being visible. Okay, so if you give it a lower Z index, then the text will be the topmost element. So even though they overlap, the text element will be top of the image. Okay, so that's an example for overlapping image. So if two elements are overlapping, we use a Z index. Then the one with a higher Z index will be on top, then followed by the one with the lower Z index. Okay, so if you have a website where if you have a website where you cannot see certain content, it's probably because the elements are overlapping. So one has gone hidden under the other one. So the one that you want it to be more visible, then you have to give it a Z index of a higher value to overshadow the other one. So now we continue. Position text in an image. Position text in an image. So this is similar to the one we did. There is that we can use our position absolute, and we give it the top and the left. We'll give each of them a value. Then the mother container will be our relative. Like we said that for position, if you are positioning it relative to a parent, then the parent, you have to give it a position attribute relative. Okay, so let's run this code. So that one, it uses the banner as an example. So we will see the code chart source link. Okay, so we have this, then I copy the link for the image. Delete this one. Okay, so our image source is this. Okay, so now the top text, it has an attribute, an absolute attribute, and the top left, what is the attribute? The top left, that div is absolute, and at the bottom it is 40 pixels, at the left is 16 pixels. So at the left it will leave 16 pixels, and the bottom it will leave 40 pixels. Then that text will be over there. Then the bottom right, we have the bottom, then the right position is 16 pixels. Then our text will be over there. And the center, top is 100%, then width is 100%. Then we center our text. We use a text align center. So text align center centers the text to the middle. So that's the attribute. If you want to center the text in the div or a container, then use a text align. Then give it an attribute center. If you give it a text align right, it will position, it will move it to the right. If you put it to the left, it will be at the left. Center, it will make it be at the center. Then our width is 100% width. Then opacity, in order for the text to show, we'll make it a little bit lighter. And to make an image or a div lighter, we use the opacity. So by default, opacity is 1. So the lower the opacity, the more lighter it is. So we can refresh our, now the image, we are using the chart URL for the image banner image. So that's what we change over here. So our source is going to be the image link for chart. Okay, so now when fresh, okay, so that's it. So because we give it 100% width, it takes the entire screen. Now the opacity is what makes it a little bit lighter. Then this is our top. This is where we position our top text. And this is where we position our right text. And this is where we position our bottom text. And this is where we position our bottom left. Okay, and this is where we position our center. Okay, so basically we use these attributes. If you want to add text to an image, maybe you have an image, then you want to put some text like a caption on the image, you can use this styling to have it. So the main container will be relative position. Then the other text will position them to be absolute because it will be in relation to the parent container. So the image is in the parent container. So if you give this one top value, the parent container start from here. So your position will be based on relation to the top and the left that you give. Based on the position to the right and the top. Then here based on the position to the bottom and the right. And here based on the position to the bottom and the left. Okay, so then here it is centered. We center the text, but it takes the entire it's positioned at 100%. It's 100%, so it will to be at the middle. Okay, so we have it with 100%, and the top is 50%. So the top is 50%, so it will be at the middle. But the width, it will take the entire width, and the text align center will center it over here. Okay, so that is it for our position text over an image. Now we want to apply this knowledge to create a simple dashboard. So in our programming, when we get to database, when we get to database, we start to create a login panel where a person has to log in. Then once it logs and we show our dashboard page based on what our functionality of our application is. So we are going to use the knowledge that we learned. So this is a fixed div. The div over here, it is fixed. So it is fixed with top 0, left 0, bottom 0, and we've given it a width. So based on the width we give, it will end over here. Okay, so it is fixed. And then inside our dashboard, we also have another absolute div. So this one normally is a search bar. So a search bar, this is just illustration. By default, the result will not be displayed unless a user start typing. Then the result will display. But this is just to illustrate it. So in the actual production, we will hide this container. We only make it visible when the user typing something and a result is fetched inside it. Then we make it visible, which will be absolute here. So if any other text are below it, then it will cover it because it is an absolute. Then now if it has a higher Z index, then it will be at the top, so the other text will not be visible. Okay, so now we can copy this into our text, then we can run it, so that you see how it is. Okay. So now we copy, then we refresh our page. Okay, so that's an example of a dashboard. So we will put our panel, left panel here, where we have our menu, we have our logo here, and here will be the content of our page over here. Okay, so by default, this part where we have the result, by default the result is not displayed unless the person, so by default this will be given maybe display none. By default it will be display none. Okay, so as you can see, it is not visible. So when the person starts to type, then it will, and when the result comes, then it will give a display to be blocked. Then the display will be blocked, then it becomes visible. Okay, so if there is no, so when we write a JavaScript, so when the person, so by default this will be none. We have an attribute none, so it will not be displayed. By default, it will have an attribute of none. So if the user starts typing something, maybe searching for something, and maybe types web. Okay, so once it types, we'll fetch from the database. We'll go to the database, then we'll search if there is something that exists. Maybe in this example, I think it's a library application. So if a book exists by that name, then we'll set the display of that name to be blocked. Then it will become visible. Then you can see that when it is there, it will shadow this one, because that one is absolute. So the absolute will overshadow the other, it covers the other element. So when the user types, then it will be, then it change from none to blocked, then it becomes visible. Okay, so we'll be modifying these applications when we come developing our portal. We are developing our application project for this course. We'll use this dashboard, just that we'll add content like a logo here, then we'll add the menus over here, then we'll have maybe logout and other things here. So when you get to that stage, we'll modify this dashboard code, then we use it for our dashboard. Okay, so we continue to the last session. So here we have our display block and inline block. Okay, so in the display block, it covers the entire space. So if you're given an attribute display block, it will start from here to this side. So it takes the entire horizontal space. So that's a display block. Okay, so like I've also explained in the other one, display none will make it invisible, so it will not display at all. But display block will cover the entire width. Okay, now display inline block, the inline blocks makes it horizontal to other elements. So if there are more elements and they are inline block, they will be inline to each other. But if it is blocked, since it takes the entire space, then it will be they will display in the vertical way if it's blocked, because they take entire space, so the others cannot cover the other space. But if the inline, it takes some space, then others can also take the other space. So for example, if you are using a menu, we have a menu where the menus will be horizontal, where we have maybe home, about us, contact us, our services, all in the horizontal. Then we use a display inline block attribute so that they all be inline. If you don't do that by default, they will all be vertical. So this is just an example of that code. So you can run this example. So we save it, then we refresh. Our page. Okay, so as you can see, this one is display block, so it takes the entire space, so there's no space for the other ones, so they all be vertical. But this is display inline block, so this one, when this one comes, the next one will follow, then the other ones will follow, then the other one will follow. There is not enough space before the other one will come below it, but if there is enough space, they will all be inline to each other. So that's what the display property inline when this is. So you can see that this menu, this URL by class menu, the list have an attribute display block. Okay, then the menu 2, the list, they have an attribute display inline. That's why they are display horizontal in inline to each other. Okay, so normally we use this one when we are positioning one div next to each other, or when you are making a menu where you want each of the menu lists to be horizontal, then you use the inline block on each of the li. So you give the li an attribute inline block, so they all be inline to each other. Okay, so now we come to our last part. So we can display these also in the inline positions. So in the inline positions, then we also call the inline, give them the inline property. So in this example, we have 4 divs. 2 of the divs are display block, so they will be vertical to each other. One will be at the top, the other one will be below it. Now, the third and the fourth divs are display inline block. So with the inline block, if you give a space less than 100%, then if there is enough space, the other div will continue. Okay, so now this third div has a width of 48%, and the fourth one has a width of 48%. So this is less than, it's not more than 100%. So they can all be next to each other. So since they are all inline blocks, they will be next to each other. Then if this example, it floats we use float to position the div to a particular position. So if you give a div or an attribute, an element float right, it will move the element to the right position. If you give the float left, it will move the element to the left position. Okay, so I will run this example, then you can see how it works. Okay, so in this example, when we run, okay, so you can see that these are display blocks, so they take the entire space. Now, but this and these are inline, and since they have width of 48, now there is enough space. After this one is displayed, there is enough space for the second one to be next to each other because they are inline. Okay, now it is away from this one a little because we use that to float right to move this red one more to the right. That's why there is enough gap over here. So sometimes you can use this one if you want to have 2 contents of your page, where you want to have one here, you want to have one here, then you can have that div inline to each other. So you write the content over here, then you write the content over here. So in that case, you can have the content, so left content comes here. So your left content will be here. So write the HTML element for the left content. Then here the right content comes here. Okay. Then you can refresh. Okay. So in this case, you can see that whatever content you put here will be over here for the left. Then whatever content you put here will be over here for the right. Okay. So thank you very much for enjoying the week 2. It is lengthy, so I will advise that as you can see, it's 2 hours plus, so you can take it gradually. So by by the 7 days in a week, you should be able to cover the entire slide. Then you have that knowledge before we move on to our week 2. So now you're supposed to design a personal profile page as an assignment. So you can design it. If you have any challenge, you can just send me a message and I'll see how I can assist you. Okay, so thank you very much and have a lovely day. Bye.